Hi, this is Majinoni, and there's been a bunch of people who've been asking me about the DC reboot that's scheduled in September, and what are my thoughts on this. And honestly, I went through many, many different emotions. I went through things like utter rage, like how can they do this? I went through indecisiveness, like who cares? It's DC. And then I also uh, talked to the comic store owner that I go to, and he actually gave me some insight that I hadn't considered, and that actually helped formulate my current opinion as to what DC's doing and how they're going about doing it. Now, the reason why I have this map for Flashpoint is this. Now, some people think that this may not be an Elseworlds book. This might be what the shape of the DC universe is going to be going forward. And I firmly do not believe that's the case. This, for example, this Amazon Atlantean war zone, that's going to be gone, once this thing is over and done with. I'm sure by now a lot of you have already seen the covers or pictures of some of the 52 titles that they're going to be releasing. There's Aquaman, Wonder Woman, Mr. Terrific, JLA, things like that. So all of this stuff everything is going to be reset back. You're not going to have this extreme doom and gloom. This is going to be DC's chance to, in a sense, wipe the slate clean and start fresh, I guess you can say. The thing that you have to consider is this: DC is getting their collective butts beaten by Marvel every single month. Week after week, they just constantly get crushed, and they're just not, making a lot of money anymore. There's a lot of reasons why you can say that. Could be bad writing, could be bad art. You can also go by the angle of, well, these characters do not resonate well with the 25th century, or sorry, the 21st century. And granted, that is partially true. You have Wonder Woman, you have Superman. How do they fit in today's world? But the same thing could be said with Marvel. You have characters like Doctor Strange, you have Captain America, you have Daredevil. How do these people fit? Marvel finds a way to do it, and they make it interesting in a lot of cases. Doctor Strange was a dead character until he went into the new Avengers, and he became interesting again, became relevant. And I think that's the problem with DC. They just don't know how to make their characters relevant any longer. In a way, I guess you can say I think it's part of it's their philosophy on what they do with their characters. Marvel tries to make their characters in modern day setting, modern day times, world. DC puts their characters in a fictional world. And when you put them in the fictional world, that's where there's that disconnect. It's harder to, for example, a lot of Marvel characters you can identify with. DC characters, you don't have that. I don't have that connection with. Like, for an example, growing up, I would have a stronger connection with Spider-Man, with Peter Parker, than I would with Tim Drake. And that's because I don't have my parents getting killed in front of me type thing. I don't have that kind of a tragedy. But it's easier to sympathize with the high school kid who, has a few friends type thing. So you have that kind of association, I guess you can say. Now, anyways, going back to this Flashpoint and the reboot nonsense. Now, I know DC is saying this is not a reboot. It is a reboot in a sense because they're shaking everything up. But I don't think DC is going to be able to shake things up as much as people are anticipating they're going to do. I think what they're going to probably do is they're going to highlight some characters that weren't highlighted in the past. Like, for an example, Mr. Terrific. Cyborg is getting a tremendous push in this book. It looks like they're doing something interesting with Aquaman and Wonder Woman in this, but I don't know how well that's going to translate in the comics. DC also tried to reboot Wonder Woman, and it just failed. I mean, I really feel sorry for any writer that decides to tackle Wonder Woman, because what do? No matter what you do, it's a character that doesn't fit in today's world, I guess you can say. Her costume is kind of stupid looking. They reboot the costume, change the costume, and everybody just said it's not patriotic enough. I'm like, what do you mean it's not patriotic enough? And it's like I guess there's a lot of characters that just they don't have the right creative push or the right creative hook. And like right now, Superman should be non-stop action, robot battles, Lex, Brainiac, alien invasions, strong villains, But what we're getting is Superman walking across the country. I mean, that was their big push. And I'm like, how can you, the Superman fan, read that? It goes against what you want in the Superman title. I understand that the battle with with all those Kryptonians getting killed and things like that would be traumatizing, but to have him walk across the country and then that's your month after month, that's what you're reading. It's bad. It's a bad idea. And then they didn't even follow up with it by having compelling character stories. A lot of their character stories were not really that interesting, and very cliched, especially with the child abuse one. You don't even have supervillains attacking him along the way like they should have. It was just bad writing, and it's a shame because Straczynski just dropped the ball on this whole idea. Maybe he was traumatized because of what Marvel did to him with Spider-Man. I don't know. But anyways, I don't think, going back to this, I don't think that DC is going to be rebooting everything. I think they are doing some right things, like, for example, putting Jeff Johns and Jim Lee on Justice League, and then they give you what you want for Justice League, the top-tier heroes. And that's what they should have done. They should have done that a long time ago. There's certain key titles that should have had their top creative, forces on, but they don't. It's like, I guess you can say there's they just didn't do it. Now, granted, Flash had great writing, or I'm sorry, great writer, had great art, but you have. I guess you can say it didn't tie in, it didn't have a good enough hook to make it a top 10 book. I mean, I thought it was entertaining, but, if you were, like, for an example, a new reader, and you go, hey, there's The Flash, it's issue number 1, it's Brightest Day, let me give it a try. There's nothing that would make an average reader want to continue reading it. But you put if you put Jeff and Jim, and you put Superman, Batman, Flash, Green Lantern on Justice League, now somebody wants to read this book. My fear with Justice League is it's only going to go maybe 6 months or less, because Jim Lee can't keep a schedule, and the book's going to get late, and then that lateness is ultimately going to destroy the title, and it's not going to be what it's the hype. It's not going to live up to the hype that it should do. I think if you really think back, when Grant Morrison took over JLA and he brought back all the key characters, think of all the excitement that generated when that first happened. That's what DC should be doing with every single one of their key core titles, and that's what they don't do. One thing I will say is I'm worried and annoyed in that I know that everything's ending. So, for example, I think Batman is phenomenal. Batman is one of the strongest DC titles right now, and I'm worried about what's going to happen to those stories. In terms of continuity, I'm looking at it right now as it's issues out of time, meaning they're stories that I get to read now, but they don't matter. It's side stories. It doesn't affect anything, because once that reboot happens, what's going to happen with Justice League Inc.? I mean, sorry, not Justice League, Batman Inc. What's going to happen with Dick Grayson as being Batman? You have a Batman movie coming out. Are you going to have Dick Grayson and Bruce Wayne both as Batman, and you're going to have a moviegoer go into the comic store going, I don't understand. Why is Dick Grayson Batman and Batman is Batman in this issue? I don't, it makes me worried what they're going to do. And I honestly think that right now, I love the dynamic of how you have Dick Grayson and you have Batman at the same time. It's giving you two different types of stories. And I mean, now granted, I know eventually you're going to have to change it back, where eventually something's going to have to happen. But I just wish it wasn't as a result of a reboot. I wish it was something that was much more organic. And the one group of people I really feel sorry for the most is the retailers. I think this 52 issue launch is a horrible idea. Now granted, DC's banking on the fact that it's going to generate a tremendous amount of sales. And it will. It probably will generate some sales, and in other cases it won't. Like, for an example, you can take... I'm just going to pick on Mr. Terrific. If Mr. Terrific is not the top player or top comic that they think it's going to be, what's going to happen is a comic store might base it off of JSA sales, and maybe the JSA fans don't want a Mr. Terrific comic, and then as a result the issues, they only sell 2 instead of 20 or 10, and then on the flip side, because there's so many titles, now they're going to have to buy an insane amount of books. I mean, part of me wishes that DC did a return policy. Like, every once in a while, you'll do a thing. I've seen things where they'll do, okay, look, you order 20 books, you only sell 10, you can return the other 10. No risk to you. And I wish that because of the sheer volume, DC would do that. But obviously they're not going to, because that's going to go against what they really want. But I think what would happen is you'd probably find more comic shops buying more, taking the chances and ordering more titles. That way, they'll have ample stock of everything because they wouldn't have to worry about it. Because I have a feeling what's going to happen is you're going to find some titles like Batman and Superman, whatever people were buying before, that number's pretty much going to be the same. I did read somebody mentioning that, these reboots are bad because it's, the minute you reset that number to 1 again, it gives customers a chance to close that run. And I agree with them in the sense that could happen. But I think in this situation here, because it's such a game changer with DC, I don't think you're going to see that much of a drop. I think you're going to see maybe some speculators come in. And what I mean by speculators, I don't necessarily always mean the ones who are going to buy it for money. But, it could also be, somebody who's like, well, I'll give it a try. It looks interesting. But I think what's going to happen is those numbers are going to be inflated. You're probably going to find a lot of people not agreeing, like those types of people not agreeing with what's going on. And you're probably going to see the number go up and then level and then just drop. Especially with some of these other lower tier titles that, like I said, like Mr. Terrific. That one, I don't see Mr. Terrific lasting like 100 issues. I only see this thing going maybe 12 or less. And that's unfortunate. What's going to happen is you're going to see a flood of titles, and then suddenly these titles are going to become mini-series or maxi-series, and then they're just going to disappear. And then the comic book stores are going to be stuck with all these extra books because of that. Now, originally, I was going to, like I said, I was really going to go into an insane rant, but, after I talked to my, the owner of my comic store, I was like, if I go on a rant and say this is the most horrible idea in the world, don't buy any of this nonsense, the only thing that's really going to be doing is going to be hurting the comic book shops. And even though I totally disagree with a lot of what they're doing, I understand why they're doing it. And like I said, it's because they don't sell books. They need to do something. And same thing with the online books. It's the fact that what's going to happen is in September, USA Today, CNN, are going to run a news story that says massive reboot in the DC universe. Nothing has changed. Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, blah blah blah. Jim Lee, blah blah blah. Go buy these books. So what's going to happen is, just imagine this. You have two different types of readers. The comic book reader is on sites like Newsarama or Comic Book Resources. They're like, OMG, this is amazing. And then what do? They are trained to go straight to their comic book store and buy their books, right? But imagine some guy, maybe in their 20s, maybe in their 30s, whatever, and then they go, I haven't read Batman. I used to read Batman when I was 15, 13 years old, and this actually sounds interesting. I can buy it online, and they're reading it on their iPad, this news story. So what they're going to do then is they're just going to click the link, and then they're going to buy the issue. So I think, if anything, the online distribution is actually going to be a tremendous boost in sales for DC. Just for that reason, you're going to find it's the casual reader who's buying it on impulse. Now, granted, you're probably going to see this huge spike, and then it's probably going to drop. But the fact that you're going to see that huge spike is what's the important thing, because you have to realize most of those people are not going to go to a comic book store in the first place. The people who are just sitting there in their Starbucks, and they're on their iPads, and they're clicking buttons, clicking links, they're playing Angry Birds, things like that. They don't want to go to the comic book store. All they want to do is they want to sit there drinking their latte, push a button, get their movie. They want to push the button, get their game, push the button, and read their comic book. So it's actually, I'll give DC the credit for actually taking a chance on that. I hate the idea because of the sense of, I'm old school in the sense of, I see every dollar spent online as a dollar spent not in a comic book store. And I fear that it ultimately is going to run all those comic book stores out of business. There's a lot of comic book stores that are really hurting badly, and they need sales every chance they can get. So I see it as a way of also hurting them. So I'm going to offer this up to you guys, and this is what I'm going to suggest. You're going to see 52 titles in September. You may or may not agree with some of these titles. In some cases, you might buy them all. Other cases, you might get exactly what you got before. But what I'm going to suggest is this. If there is any title out of that 52 that you used to buy but did not buy, but you are choosing not to buy it because you don't like the direction it's going, pick up another comic book. Pick up something from Marvel. If you don't like Marvel, pick up something from IDW, Dark Horse, anything. Whatever you do, do not let this reboot reduce the number of books that you buy. My guess is most people are probably going to increase their books just because they're going to go, I want this, I want to try this, this looks good, that looks good, and ultimately they're going to raise their numbers up a little bit. But if you're one of the people who just look at it and go, I don't like the direction that the character is going, just buy another title. Even if it's another DC title, from one of the 52, do that. But whatever you do, don't let your numbers drop, because the comic stores cannot afford that. Anyways, that's my take. I know this is going to be kind of long, but because DC did say that they are modernizing their books, I thought I would add this in. Here are a couple suggestions for DC to help modernize their characters. Bruce Wayne's parents basically made a fortune off of mortgage scamming. So now that you have a bunch of people who are pissed off at the Wayne family. Well, what happens is the Waynes get killed because of an angry homeowner who had their home repossessed. Then Wayne decides to then use his money to basically do good compared, to make up for all the bad that their families have done. That's one. Superman. Superman is actually he's not an alien. And keep in mind, you have to worry about the lawsuit where the parts of his origin might go to the original copyright owners. But anyways, Superman is genetic stem cell baby. Basically what he is he's in an embryo. They inserted all these different DNA alterations, and he is the result of that. And that's why he has incredible strength, super hearing, bullet, invulnerable, etc., etc. Then the Flash, he's also born from that same lab where he was actually, there was an explosion, and they were ingesting his genes with, for example, the genes of a cheetah or other very quick animals. And as a result of the explosion, that connected him to the Speed Force and blah, 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 blah. Wonder Woman is actually some of you might get this part. Wonder Woman is the result of steroids in Russia. She used to be an Olympic hopeful, and due to a steroid, they found out that she was using steroids, and because of that, she was kicked out. Her family was cast out. They are working slave labor farms, whatnot, and it drove her mad. And her love of Greek culture, the Greek gods, because she used to read that, while she was resting, while training, and as a little kid, she convinced herself that she is actually part of the Greek pantheon type thing. Anyways, that's some suggestions of potential reboots. Anyways, if you have any comments or questions, let me know. Rate the video up or down. Let me know what you think. I'm also really curious to know what you guys are thinking about the reboot. Like I said, I hate, every fiber of my being says I hate it, but I think that this is the only thing DC can do to help boost sales, because currently they just don't have what it takes to beat Marvel. Anyways, let me know what you think, and I'll have more reviews up later.